Hello.
Hiya. I'm Wendy.
I'm Andy.
Andy, and this is part of the joint series between Bury Christian Fellowship and Life Church, and we are part of Bury Christian Fellowship if you're from Life Church and you don't know us. So
Yeah. So last week Andy spoke about perspective. We're going to talk about patience. We're going to particularly look at the people of Israel, and they kind of lacked patience a lot of the time in their journey through the wilderness.
So some of the main stuff we're looking at today is out of Exodus 32. So if you want to go and have a look later, that's the Bible verse that you're looking for.
So the Israelites' journey through the wilderness is really, it's a kind of a roller coaster ride of real highs, the parting of the Red Sea, etc., and then real lows where they just completely lose the plot and start grumbling and moaning, and isn't that a bit like us really sometimes? So we get to Exodus 32, and they've probably only been in the wilderness a few weeks or months at the most. But in that time, God has parted the Red Sea. He's provided a pillar of salt and a pillar of fire for them. He's been feeding them manna from heaven and all. You'd think they'd pretty much have a grasp of how God is amazing and he's always going to be there and provide for us, but not so much. So at this point, Moses is up on the mountain receiving the Ten Commandments. It says to the Israelites that it looked like a consuming fire at the top of the mountain. I mean, it's awesome. And yet, we read in Exodus 32, we're going to read it from the Message version because it really captures something. It says, when the people realized that Moses was taking forever in coming down off the mountain, they rallied around Aaron and said, do something, make gods for us who will lead us. That Moses, the man who got us out of Egypt, who knows what's happened to him? So then Moses' brother Aaron immediately agrees to do what they say, and he makes this golden calf. And the people say, these are our gods. This is our God, the golden calf. Brought us out of Egypt. I mean,
we're laughing at that because we were saying, phrasings in the Message. We love this translation. Like, it's taking forever, and that Moses, it's quite.
So, and meanwhile, up on top of the mountain, God is giving Moses the Ten Commandments. Two of which are, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image and bow down to it. And also he's saying that his desire is to show love to 1,000 generations of those who will keep his commandments. That's his desire. That's what God is like. But yet they've completely missed that. And they've really short-circuited that blessing in their life because they've tried to find their own solution. And that is replicated through so many other people, through the Bible, isn't it?
We were saying, and patience really is just trusting in God's timing and trusting in God's plan and trusting in they were talking about, Andy was talking about perspective last week, trusting in that he sees the right perspective, he sees the right time, and trusting in that process, which isn't passive. It's not sitting at home and watching Netflix until God goes ding. No, it's we sometimes it's waiting, but quite often we have a role to play, but it's doing it God's way, in God's time.
Yeah, totally.
And a lot of that is just out of relationship with him. But there are lots of examples in the Bible. Moses was told to strike the rock the first time to get some water for the Israelites. The second time he was told to speak to the rock, but it worked striking the rock the first time, so why not do that? Because that works. Now, God in his graciousness provided the water, but there was an outcome for Moses which wasn't very favourable because he hadn't listened to God. The spies went into the promised land. 10 of them came back absolutely rigid with fear because they were giants. But 2 of them had learned through the wilderness that God was faithful and that God was who he said he was.
Yeah.
And that actually, what did they have to fear? Because they had God on their side.
Yeah.
And they'd learned who he was. They'd in the kind of the waiting, being patient, they'd learned that God would do what he said he would do.
That's it. It's trusting that God will do what he says he'll do. And it might not always look like we think it'll look, but he does do it.
Yeah. And there's a classic story of Abraham and Sarah trying to help God out, which again caused a few problems. And God still provided them with Isaac, who was an answer to the promise. But they did try and short circuit it because they were impatient. God didn't seem to be coming through with what he said he would do, and they were 90 years old, and how on earth could God do what he said he would do? So let's help him out a little bit. And
absolutely,
that's not what God wanted. And
God's way is not always the logical way. So and yeah, God's led us on our own journey, which has had its ups and downs, but God's always come through. Do you want to share maybe one or two of those?
Yeah. We've been married for 25 years. We've actually known each other for nearly 33. I know, we look really young.
We've had a few opportunities to be patient with
just in the natural. When we were just about to get married, obviously various people had prayed for us, and this one lovely lady prayed for me. And I remember at the time the other word was I was like really blessed by, but this second part of the word, she said, God said, do not worry, for I will look after your children. She said, I really feel like that's what God's saying to you. And I was like, oh, that's really nice. I'm just getting married. I was 21 at the time, and I was thinking, that's probably not God, but there we go.
We weren't thinking about children.
It's a nice word, But I went home and wrote it down. And a year later, I'm sat in a doctor's surgery with a doctor telling me that I may never be able to have children. And I remember coming home and talking to Andy, and we cried and hadn't even thought about it to that point, but suddenly it was a massive thing. And I looked in my journal that night, and there was this word from this woman from a year before. God knew that was going to happen. Now, God didn't heal me that day. I went through tests and doctors and hospital appointments and operations, and
over a year,
and came to an appointment where they said, yep, you've definitely got this. All the time people are praying for me, every appointment, nothing's happening, and it was hard. But then I remember this appointment in the March, and I turned up for it and had all the scans and everything, and this doctor came to see me, and she kept going in and out of the room and looking a bit confused, and she came back and she said, I'm really sorry, to left you waiting so long, but I had to go and check the scans because, I can see your scans from your last appointment, and, you definitely have this condition, and all your tests and everything. She said, but the scans I've got in front of me can't possibly be yours because you haven't got this condition. In fact, you've never had this condition. There's no scarring, no nothing. And I was like, whoa, I've got people praying for me, and I thought I had faith, but even in that moment, I was shocked. She said, I don't understand what's happened. And I had the privilege of just briefly sharing with her what God had so obviously done. Yeah. And for those of you who don't know us, we have 4 children. So God has definitely rubber stamped that. But it wasn't an easy journey. Really, until the very last day, there didn't seem to be any change. I mean, we wouldn't have nothing to short circuit it, but it would have been hard. It would have been so easy to kind of go to God and moan and whinge and complain and stuff. And it's not that we're like mega whatever, but just we're just so thankful to God for how he led us through that time. And probably the other one is
just about our provision, really.
Yeah, we work for ourselves, so we trust God a lot for our money, and I think everybody does, whether you've got a job or do self-employed like we do. But we about 13 years into being self-employed, I remember driving down the road with the kids in the car, talking to God about the mortgage payment that was due at the end of the week that there wasn't money in the bank for, and just talking away to him, and he said, how long, Wend? And I'm going, pardon? And he said, how long? How long do you think you'll need to before you trust me? And it just broke me. I was like, I'm really not trusting you. Oh my God, I thought I was being patient and trusting him and, patiently waiting. And I really wasn't. And I remember just in that moment saying, no more. Actually, God, today's the day that I really trust you, that I'm really patient for your timing.
Yeah.
And
you came back and we prayed about that. And
yeah,
it really changed something.
It really broke something,
in our life, really.
We've just seen, we'd seen the goodness of God before then, but we've seen it since as well. And just, just really encourage you to just trust God. If God's given you a promise, he hasn't forgotten about it. There's a verse in the Bible that says, my word will not return to me void. And
in fact, God went on to do some
incredible things.
We won't go into all now, but some incredible things with our finances over the next few years, which has just blown our minds. So yeah.
And he wasn't at all horrible or mean or chastising. It was done so lovingly to me. It was definitely a come on, but actually it was done in such a way that I just felt so loved.
Yeah.
And just kind of just pulled in deeper to him, really, into what he wanted and the way that he wanted me to live, and that actually patience was a real gift in seeing him move, and how incredible that is. So.
Yeah. So we thought we'd just leave you with some questions, really. In what areas of your life are you lacking in patience? What is God saying about that area? And if you don't know, why not ask him? Because he'll tell you. So the second question is, what are the idols in your life that need to go?
And an idol really is anything that we make more important than God.
The final question is, what promises has God given to you? And what's he spoken over your life? And have you settled for less? Have you settled for something more comfortable or easier?
And if you're in the middle of the journey and you are being patient, keep going.
Keep going.
The Bible tells you to run the race set before you, to press on towards the prize, to follow God's purposes, and to give him glory. So we'd massively encourage you to do that. And if you're struggling with patience, remember that one of the fruits of the Spirit. So to just even now, just ask God to fill you with his Holy Spirit again. And patience is one of the things that the Holy Spirit brings. So just keep doing that daily. Yeah,
and remember that God's heart is to bless you and bless all of us. He's so amazing. So thank you.
See you soon. Bye.